Well, for an analysis then on the societal implications of the Pelicot trial, Katie Ebner-Landy joins us on the program. She is a philosopher and junior fellow at the Harvard Society of Fellows. Katie, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me here.
Well, you've compared the 51 defendants in this trial to the literary characters of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Could you expand upon that for our viewers?
Yeah, sure. So it was actually one of the court psychologists who described Dominique Pelicot himself as having this split personality between Jekyll and Hyde. So the reference comes from a Gothic novel, and the Gothic novel was written by an author who observed that his French teacher, who he thought was a good guy, actually was put on trial for killing his wife. And once he attended that trial, he thought, how can I explain these two kinds of sides that exist in a personality of one person? And he wrote the story of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Dr. Jekyll, a well-to-do doctor who takes a potion and becomes Mr. Hyde at night and carries out acts of violence.
I think that comparison actually perhaps stands in slight contrast to that of Gisèle Pelicot herself, who played on Hannah Arendt's concept of the banality of evil and describing the actions of her over 50 rapists as the banality of rape. As a philosopher, what do you make of that comparison? Are the two contradictory in a sense?
Well, I think the Arendt claim is really interesting and important because, yes, rape has been banalized by our society and trivialized. But for Arendt, for the banality of evil to exist, you need to have an apparatus in which it operates. So remember, she was saying that about Eichmann and about the Third Reich. And she said that Eichmann's acts reveal that evil can be banal, but they took place within a context. What is the context here in which we could have a banality of evil that's equivalent? I think one key element, and that hasn't really been discussed enough, but should have key implications that we take away from this trial, is the chat room.
This trial has been covered worldwide. Do you think it's led to any major changes in how at least the Western imagination is of what a stereotypical rapist looks like?
Yeah, well, I think there's been changes definitely in France and perhaps elsewhere. So one of the key changes that's happened in France is that more people are coming out to have their rape cases in public. So there was a recent case in France, which just concluded a month ago, which was also held in public and lived out this statement that shame should change sides, that the victim should no longer feel ashamed.
At least in places where surveys on this have been done, we know that an estimated anywhere from 80 to 90% of rapes are carried out by a person that the victim knows. If that's the case, why do you think there's so much surprise at the profile of some of the men who participated in these rapes?
Well, this is a case that shows that it's not only that the rapist is someone who the victim knows, in this case, of course, Dominique Pelicot, very well known to Gisèle Pelicot, his then wife, but actually that we've developed chat rooms and networks in which strangers can come and rape someone. So this is not an isolated case of this particular kind of crime, a crime that brings together drugging, rape, a mass element, an online element, and filming. Because just yesterday or 2 days ago, the German news organization, I think they're called STRG_F, has exposed that there are Telegram networks in which up to 70,000 people are exchanging videos of women that they have sedated and raped. So this is a broader problem that this trial brings to light.
It sounds like you think that technology then is really maybe one of the primary drivers of some of what we've seen in this trial.
I would want to say that it's facilitating a space in which the worst of rape culture and the worst of misogyny can essentially be carried out with a feeling that there aren't consequences or repercussions. So for Dominique Pelicot, what he said to people on Coco, the chat room at the center of this trial, was, "Are you like me? Do you like rape mode?" And in life, we would hope that someone would say, "What's going on there? What are you saying? What's this about? You need to get help." But instead, on a forum like that, someone can say, "Yes, that is my darkest desire, and actually, I want to carry that out this evening." And they can think that it's possible for them to say that, and then obviously worse, do it.
Katie, as a final question to you, you've talked about how this trial has, I think, empowered essentially women who have dealt with similar things to come forward. But I think another big takeaway is that we've seen surprisingly little shows of mass protest or outrage from men, be it in France or abroad. How do you explain that, I suppose, from a philosophical perspective?
Well, I think something I noticed when I went to the trial was there was a screening room for the public to come with 60 places, and there were, I'd say, 3 men that ever attended that room. It was majority, maybe 3 to 8 men. There was a majority of women there. I think it's hard for men to know how to engage with this in a way that shows true allyship. So, of course, it is not all men who are guilty. But of course, all the defendants here, all the people who have now been sentenced, are men. So we have to grapple with the fact that this is a misogynistic case and a misogynistic context in which we're living, and men need to come to the fore and say, we are here as allies and we are not all culpable, and we are going to work to change the way we interact with women and the way we think about desire and the way, crucially, we interact online.